Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to People April, an event that dare not call itself People. This is a BookTube event created by Roz at Scally Dandling About the Books and Elizabeth at Bookends and Books, designed to celebrate life writing in all its variety. How many variations on this theme can you think of? There are letter collections. There are letter collections by other people, memoirs by other people, memoirs by yourself, full dress autobiographies, uh, factory churned out pre-written autobiographies. There are letter collections, as I mentioned. There's also auto fiction. Roz seems to want to stretch the blanket to include auto fiction, and there's also full dress biography, my favorite kind of writing, where an author, not necessarily with a dog in the race, goes to a subject, a historical figure that they find interesting, and just starts the whole apparatus in motion. So I need to find all of the primary documents, wherever they are, and I need to go to them. In the pre-internet age, you need to go to the primary documents. You need to go to them anyway, even in the internet age, because you don't know what the lay of the land is going to look like in situ. It could be, it has happened many times, that every single scholar who's looked at this tranche of documents before you has missed something important. You have to go in person. And you have to put out the word for anybody. If you're dealing with a subject that's within living memory, you have to put out the word for anybody who has any shred of contact with that figure to contact you. You want interviews with those people, especially if it's something new or revelatory, an interview that's never happened before. That shouldn't be as important as it is in the biographical genre, but publishers go straight for that, like sharks to chum in the water. So you have to be able to say something like that. Great if you can find a batch of primary documents that no one's found before. Maybe you put out the word, you start to get trusted by people, they put out the word, and somebody comes forward, a long-lost girlfriend, an aunt once removed, that has a seaman's chest full of books, or letters, or documents of some kind or other, that no biographer's ever seen before. You have to do all of that. You have to set all of that in motion, and then you have to, when you're done with all of that, whether you do it alone or with a cadre of graduate students or assistants of one kind or other, then you have to amass all of that stuff in a pile and figure out how to distill it onto the page. You have to make it a great story without enforcing on it a narrative. If you enforce on it a narrative, you can still come up with a biography, but it won't be anywhere near as trustworthy because lives don't happen with narratives. You have to do all of that, and then, if you're in a very rare minority of biographers, at the very last minute, once you've done all of that legwork and then all of that fact distilling, you then have to write it in an interesting way. Most biographers leave out that final step or try and fail. And this is my favorite kind of writing. I don't need much in the way of incentive to add a full dress biography to my night's reading. I've been doing that all through People April. I'm going to continue until the month is over. We just have a week left. And last night I had a little more time on my hands. So I picked something a little more ambitious. A book that I meant to get to when it first came out, and didn't. I don't think that I did. I racked my memory. I looked at my journal, and I also looked online. I don't think that I ever paid any official attention to this book. And it came out before we were talking to each other, I'm pretty sure. So I would never mention it on this channel. The biographer is Catherine Frank, and this is her biography of Indira Gandhi, the third Prime Minister of India, the daughter of Nehru, who was a towering figure on the world stage. She was Prime Minister for a decade, from late 1960s to the late 1970s. Then she was out of power for a while, and then she came back into power in 1980. 1980 is a theme for my videos today. Don't quite know why. But she came back into power in 1980 and was in power when she was assassinated by her own bodyguards. And in that time, in those two stints in office and in the time when she was so-called in the wilderness, there's a lot of stuff. A lot of complicated material to cover. She was, for a number of those years, a dictator. She was, in the eyes of a certain segment of the inhabitants of India, a dictator anyway, even when it wasn't the period where she did, in fact, suspend all laws. she managed to make a lot of enemies among sects of her own people. It was two of those that killed her. Uh, and she also took a lot of controversial stances in what was then the very much ongoing Cold War. And when I describe all of that, I mean, she was a fascinating individual person as well. Personally, just behind closed doors when she wasn't being, an Iron Lady, she was fascinating personally. An almost poetic soul, I want to say, although people who only know the thumbnail of Indira Gandhi will not believe that. That's the last thing you'd think. They would no more believe it about her, especially people in the Indian subcontinent. They would no more believe the word poetic associated with her than they would believe it associated with the one person in modern history that she's most compared to, which is Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher, it's true. Margaret Thatcher was a thing of wheels and cogs and gears. She had no interior. But Indira Gandhi did. No matter what you think of her actions, most of her actions were in office were extremely controversial. Let's just put it that way. No matter what you think of those actions, she did have a rich interior life, a genuinely interesting person. But aside from that, just on the synopsis that I've made so far, you know already the challenge that Catherine Frank or any other biographer is going to have to manage here, because this is really complex Indian politics. And you are going to have to assume, if you are a biographer of Indira Gandhi, that your readers don't know anything about it. That your readers don't know anything about those politics. They're not on their mind. They're not in Uttar Pradesh or anything like that. They don't know anything about this. You're going to have to explain it all to them without somehow bogging down your book. And Catherine Frank manages to do that all throughout this book. It's marvelously done. Almost, the word that kept coming to my mind when I was reading it last night was elegant. It's elegantly done. It's even-tempered. It's fair. I believe, this is not always the highest compliment when it comes to a full-dress biography, but I believe that Indira Gandhi would have liked this book. I think she would have found it tough to take at parts, but I think she would have sat back, the classic hooked finger in front of the lips, she would have sat back and said, well, I don't agree, but the facts do bear a reading. She was always the most intelligent person in the room whenever she was gathered with any other statesman of any kind. That wasn't always hard to do. I mean, she overlapped with Richard Nixon, and Richard Nixon was a lout. She overlapped with, I think Canada had Gary Trudeau, who was really, really outgoing and affectionate, but only to his own reflection in a mirror. Not to anybody else. It's not in any useful way. And she had, fairly high-powered, incredibly knuckle-draggingly misogynistic Soviet counterparts. Managed to hold her own with all of those. You pretty much have to, right? If you reach this point, this pinnacle of power as a woman, you would have to be able to hold your own. And I was amazed all throughout at what a job Catherine Frank does at giving you Indira Gandhi's political world. She was, after all, first and foremost a political creature. She lived by it, and it killed her. She was, if you try to write a biography of her in which you assume that your readers know that, or that they don't care about it, either way, you'll be misserving them. And this doesn't. So I was glad that I gave this the extra time last night. I was halfway into my night's silent escapades, my reading escapades every night. I was halfway into it when I realized, I have room for a serious work here. I'm not trying to slight Peter Ackroyd or anybody for writing a smaller, shorter book. I'm certainly not slighting the shade of the Red Baron. But I realized, things are going well here. They're going smoothly here. You have a bit of tailwind. Why don't you read a bigger book, a more serious book? And I'm glad I did. I'm really, really glad I did. My people, April, looked for a little while there like it was going to be cursed, but that has changed completely. That just goes out the window. This has been wonderful. It's a wonderful event. I'm hoping that a lot of you are contemplating reading biographies. Part of People April is, of course, to encourage you to read biographies, but another part is to maybe de-intimidate you. I think a lot of readers out there, even fairly good readers, look at big, fat, detailed biographies. Like a lot of readers, if you went to your used bookstore and you saw a $5 hardcover copy of this with a dust jacket in perfect condition, I think a lot of people would say, oh no, 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 no. I couldn't possibly understand. I don't know the context. There's no way that I could read it. And it wouldn't interest me anyway, because I know the two periods of history that I'm interested in, and it's not one of them. I think a lot of people probably look at biography that way. And part of People April, I would like to think, is encouraging you not to. You are missing a lot of really good reading experiences when you think that way about a whole genre. But whether you do or not, I of course want to know how your own People April is going. We have one more week to go. What are you going to finish the week with? I myself could not be more psyched for tonight's add-on to tonight's reading. I don't think there are any biographies for the new releases that I'm reading tonight. So biography will be added on at the end of it. And there's a writing task that I have hovering over me. And if I were to just buckle down and do it as soon as I turn off this video, then I would have all the time in the world to add another serious biography to the night, which after Indira, would be, that is really calling to me to do. So we will see. I have no idea what it will end up being. I'll report back next time and we'll find out together. Thank you, BookTube.